Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Gustavo Tolosa, and welcome to the Gustavo Online Book Club. And we are currently reading The Pleasure Trap. So, as usual, it's always nice to see everyone logging in. Thank you for joining the live presentation. And if you would like to watch other past sessions of this book club or other past book clubs, they are all in my YouTube channel and under Online Book Club. You go to my YouTube channel, which is my name, Gustavo Tolosa, and you go to playlist and you find the Online Book Club playlist. And there are other very interesting playlists. And last week, we had the pleasure of having a true genius in this world, Dr. Doug Lyle, the author of the book, together with Dr. Goldhamer. And the session last week was superb. This Friday, be on the lookout for an email from me. It's going to have a very important gift for you. Actually, three gifts. And I know that you will love them. It's coming on Friday, so be on the lookout for that. And please help me out by forwarding that email to anybody that you like. You'll see why. I have my special teacup here, and I'm having my favorite tea. Well, I have several favorite teas, and I just want to remind you, if you're not part of Gustavo's fan club, and when you become a member, you get access to Tea with Dr. T, which is every Tuesday at this time. And it's a time for us to have positive news, positive stories and thoughts, and we all share, have a wonderful, small, intimate community. You have the chance to ask me any questions about food and my past and present struggles, and anything you want to ask me. It's your time to interview me. And I also share with you special people in my life, special moments, special trips in the past, and upcoming activities. It's just a really fun 45 minutes that we get to spend together. And if you cannot attend live, you can always sign up and then watch the replay. So, big news here. We're going to have the other author, the co-author of the book, The Pleasure Trap, Dr. Goldhamer. He will be our guest in a special extra edition of the book club, and that's going to be on Thursday, December 2nd. And he will be talking about we will be talking about one of the chapters of the book, which is how water fasting can save your life. Very interesting topic. To register for my Tea with Dr. T and Gustavo's fan club, you'd have to send me an email. This is a private club, and I will send you a link. And the email is info. I'm going to type it here. Info. Let's see if we can get it here. At plantemus.com. Okay, that's the email you need to send the email to. So today we are reading chapter 8, and chapter 9 we did last week with Dr. Lyle. So we've already done that. Chapter 8 is another brilliant chapter. It's called Magic Food. Very interesting title for a chapter. because nowadays we human beings have to deal with incredible, powerful traps that human beings in the past, not in the very far past, although, of course, the more we go back, the less human beings had to deal with these pleasure traps that bring us only disease and just not the ability to not have, I don't know how to say it, the ability to enjoy life and to be happy and to be able to spend time with our loved ones or do the things we want to do. So these magic foods are chemicals that have been manufactured by us humans, and they have become a trap. So there are about 14 million known chemicals in this planet. And let's say known, I'm sure there are more. And so if you remember back at a few chapters when Dr. Lyle was talking about the male gray shrike, this little bird, only a few of those 14 million chemicals are magic to this little bird. Certain chemicals, if ingested, will hyperactivate the pleasure centers of his brain. And I am on page 83 in the electronic version of the book, which is the first page of chapter 8. So these dopamine stimulating substances, such as cocaine, coffee, or caffeine in any form, alcohol, amphetamine, and chocolate, stimulate pleasure circuitry for a short period of time. And that's the important thing here. They stimulate this release of dopamine for a short period of time. Some chemicals, such as cocaine, can be so reinforcing that soon nothing else matters. Food, sex, or caring for offspring becomes unimportant. The magical substance will causing an intense dopamine cascade will create the illusion that the pursuit of artificially intensified pleasure is more important than even life itself. In America only, there are more than 10 million people addicted to the most potent of these magic substances. Once addicted, only a modest percentage ever escape. It is that difficult. The magic is devastating, a force of incredible destructiveness that is the direct cause of unquantifiable grief. No laboratory animal ever escapes this version of the pleasure trap, and only the most determined humans are able to find a way out. This is why, everybody, we must try to avoid these pleasure traps, because it is so incredibly hard to find a way out. It is a struggle that the members of our species were never designed to confront. We were never designed to have these pleasure traps. We were designed for a simpler, we can say design, created, whichever word you would like to use, for a simpler world where magic chemicals were nowhere to be found. We were made for a world where the most pleasurable activities were eating good, fresh food, mating, and keeping safe and warm. On page 84, Dr. Lyle and Dr. Goldhamer say, food, like drugs, can stimulate dopamine cascades in the pleasure centers of the brain. But there is food the bounty of nature that we were designed to eat. And then there is magic food, the stuff that we ourselves have created. And they are fundamentally different in their effect on health and happiness. The consumption of magic food is responsible for most premature death within industrialized society. Yet, even when an individual knows that magic food is dangerous, it can be difficult to resist. And we all can identify with this. We who have found a way out with the whole food, plant-based, no oil, and for many of you, no sugar, no salt, no alcohol as well, way of eating. It is, we know the frustration when we see loved ones, whether they're family members or friends or acquaintances that we care about, and we want to share with them that they don't have to consume these substances that are self-destructive, and we don't find a receptive ear because it is very difficult to resist these substances once we have had neuroadaptation, and we'll talk about that. The allure of modern foods is remarkably similar to that of drugs, and it poses a similar challenge. This chapter is the story of why this is so and what you can do to escape modern life's most subtle yet most broadly destructive pleasure trap. So I'm going back here to my chat and see if any of you have any comments or questions. I find this chapter so captivating. I would read it over and over and over again because it explains things so clearly. So in the holiday season, the wonderful scent of pine wreaths or a flower bouquet can disappear in a few minutes once we get used to it. How is it that we get used to it? Well, scientists have studied this phenomenon for a long time, and they have even given it a name. What is the name? Neuroadaptation. This is on page 84 of the electronic version of the book. What is neuroadaptation? It sounds like a very fancy word and technical and maybe difficult, but neuroadaptation is basically because it describes that our nerves can and do adapt. So Dr. Lyle gives us some examples of this. We are in a room with dim light, and then all of a sudden somebody turns on all the bright lights and we go, oh, okay, until a few seconds later, our eyes start to adapt, our nerves start to adapt, and now we can keep our eyes open and it doesn't bother us. Then we go outside and it's like 2 p.m. With the sun very bright, and we go suddenly outside and the sun is in front of us, and we also go, oh, wow, it's bright. And again, our nerves adapt. Then we go back inside, and that brightness that we thought it was so bright doesn't seem bright anymore. And if we go back to the first lighting, we may not see anything until a few minutes later when we get adapted. So you can see that this is very relative. The nerves are not really providing an accurate depiction of reality. This is very important. This is the secret here, I believe, that our nerves can be we can deceive them. They can be deceived. They are providing us a relative depiction of reality. They tell us when a new stimulus is brighter or dimmer, louder or softer, hotter or colder, but not precisely how bright, how loud, or how hot. So now there is a third phenomenon. When we brighten the lights, visual nerves will increase their firing rate, but only temporarily. Over time, the firing rate will slow down or adapt to the newer, higher rate of stimulation. Remember, sensation and perceptions are largely responses to relative changes. Eventually, even a brightly lit room may seem normal. Smokers, we can also talk about that, how they have adapted to the smell of smoke. Their clothes smell like smoke, along with their hair and their cars and their homes. But a smoker may not notice until he or she quits, and then their sense of smell recalibrate to a more smoke sensitive state. Then they can smell the smoke just like everyone else, just like we do. Our sense of taste is also subject to neuroadaptation, a fact that has enormous implications. And this is where it gets interesting for us, because we can adapt. The vast majority of people in nations and societies that are industrialized are neuroadapted to a high fat, high sugar, high salt diet. Okay, let's repeat that. Societies that are industrialized are neuroadapted to a high fat, high sugar, high salt diet. But like smokers, oblivious to their odors, most people have little or no awareness as to how extraordinary their dietary choices really are. Attempting to resensitize taste nerves and to enjoy foods without such artificial stimulating properties is remarkably difficult. It's similar to another very difficult, but enormously worthwhile goal. So on page 86, we have a paragraph that is called Drug Addiction and Recovery. And it says, the pleasure centers were designed to reward us for things that promote survival and reproduction, which drugs do not. However, drugs trick the system by stimulating these nerves to fire, resulting in an artificially induced sense of well-being. Long term, the repeated use of these substances results in neuroadaptation. This means that the same amount of a substance will not have as great a response as we felt previously. This is also called tolerance. Okay, so neuroadaptation is also called tolerance. And now this person's nervous system can tolerate increasingly higher levels of the drug. This can be extremely dangerous, as you can imagine. Although the nervous system may be able to tolerate increased stimulation, other bodily systems may not. Neuroadaptation may blunt the psychological effect of a drug, but it cannot blunt the physical consequences. So this is a perfect chapter, like someone says here, as we begin the holiday season, and so many opportunities for less than healthy eating. Yes, and like Dr. Lyle said last week, if you have trouble with any of these substances and manufactured foods, the best way out is complete and total abstinence, because the slightest little taste in our mouths may send us to a very dangerous path. So on page 87, the authors talk about magic foods. And so they talk about if a frog is placed in a pan of water that is heated ever so slowly, the frog may never notice that the water temperature is rising. The frog will neuroadapt to the slowly heated water and be unaware of the danger, and eventually may boil to death. His sensory capabilities fail to warn him in time that action is required for his survival. For the past several decades, the modern American diet has been slowly increasing in animal protein, animal and vegetable fat, refined carbohydrates, salt, and sugar. Imagine that instead of being this boiling water and the frog, now it is all these fake substances that have been manufactured by us humans, and the frog is us humans. And so the American diet has slowly increased in all of these very destructive substances like animal protein, animal and vegetable fat, refined carbohydrates, salt, and sugar. And just in just the past 2 decades, just 20 years, our caloric intake, mostly from increases in refined carbohydrates and sugar, has skyrocketed by 650 calories per person per day. We're not talking per week or month or year here. 650 calories extra per day per person in the last 20 years, but it's happened very slowly. A few decades ago, meat was an expensive commodity and a rare treat for some. Today, virtually everyone can have all they desire, and unfortunately, they do every day. In just the last few decades, industrialized societies have transformed an environment of scarcity to one of abundance. Modern foods are tastier than ever before as the chemicals that cause pleasure activation have been isolated and artificially concentrated. And of course, this is all done in labs. If you could see how a cracker or some other types of foods, chips, can actually in labs, they test and prepare every single detail, going from the crunchiness to the taste to the salt to the everything is designed to have us trapped. Meats, once consumed as wild game with perhaps 15% fat, are now genetically engineered and growth hormone controlled and routinely contain as much as 50% or more fat. And this reminds me of when I talk about this with someone who eats meat, and they're saying, well, my grandmother was healthy and my great grandmother was healthy and lived until 95 and didn't have any disease, and they ate meat, and I'm thinking, okay, obviously, like Dr. McDougall says, nobody likes to hear bad news about what they like. So they come up with this excuse or explanation, but what they don't know is that the meat that they're consuming today is not the same meat that their grandparents or great grandparents were consuming, because now it's genetically engineered and injected with growth hormones, which we have studies. You can search the internet as well. that shows that that causes cancer. And instead of being 15% fat, now it is 50, 60, 65, 70% fat. Ice cream, for example, which was an extraordinary invention for intensifying taste receptor pleasure response, is no longer an expensive delicacy. French fries and potato chips laden with fat are the most commonly consumed vegetable in our society. So, what happens? Most people around us think that if they were to consume a diet that is made up of whole natural foods, they would not enjoy their foods or their lives for that matter. Indeed, most believe that they would actually suffer if they consumed a health promoting diet. Like those that are addicted to drugs, they cannot imagine a better life free from the drug like effects of magic food. And like frogs in boiling water, millions are being slowly killed. So somebody says here, seems like awareness is key, noticing and taking counteractions to avoid the pleasure trap. Exactly. Remember that we are living today in an environment that is not the environment that our ancestors lived in. I imagine it as one of those war fields where there are, bombs and grenades and everywhere, and you have to be watching out every step because at any step there is a trap. And that is unfortunately how our world is today. Unless you eat every single meal in your house and cook it yourself with whole food, plant-based, no oil, when you go out into the world, you are surrounded by traps. I do eat most meals. I seldom go to a restaurant and seldom go to people's houses to eat, but I do more often. But the people that I go to know me and know that I will bring something, or they know how I eat and they make something, and so they're accommodating. If I had to go somewhere where I knew I was going to be in a hostile situation, I would just not go. And restaurants, if I go, I study their menus ahead of time online. If not, I will call, and I always pre-eat. I eat a large amount of food before I go, so that if I end up eating a pitiful salad with just lemon juice or something, I don't know, just vinegar, or I may take my own dressing, and that's better, then I will be fine. Some of you are saying, I'm truly very appreciative of you, Gustavo and Dr. Lyle. I'm learning so many things. Okay, thank you for saying that. Explains why many Americans are overweight. Of course, it's really not complicated to explain. It is complicated to get an easy. It's not complicated. It's not complicated to get out of the trap, but it's not. It takes a lot of self-discipline and control, and so you have to want to do it. So what happens if these magic foods are consistently included in the diet? Well, obviously, the result will be neuroadaptation. We will get used to them. At first, these products will be experienced as more pleasurable than natural foods. However, over time, the taste nerves adapt to this higher level of stimulation, a process that is barely noticeable. Later, we may believe that we are enjoying the rich diet more than a simpler health-promoting diet. But this is an illusion, okay? Remember, it's an illusion. It's a trap. The total quantity of pleasure response in the nervous system is likely to be equivalent. There is a figure in the book, figure 2, that you may want to look at and see how this happens. So let's see here. Okay. Unlike drugs, this is page 89, modern foods have not been shown to destroy pleasure system circuitry. However, the process of becoming readapted, let's say, to the natural food usually needs 30 to 90 days of magic food abstention. And this requires more self-discipline than most people are willing to muster. So here is a sentence that I just read that we should highlight and ingrain in our heads, that this doesn't happen overnight. Somebody who is eating high fat, high protein, high salt, and high sugar diet won't get readapted the next day, or even in 2 or 3 days, or even a week. It will take a month to 3 months. And this is why a lot of people go to places like True North, where you are totally isolated from the world outside, and you are taken care of. And some people stay a month, some people stay 2 months, some people stay 3 months. Other people just go for a week. Of course, I mean, you can stay as long, or, for as long or as little as you want. But this is a great way to abstain from these magic foods. So what do people do? Well, they wander aimlessly from one fad diet to the next, from health experts to another, and they are totally confused. They're lost and adrift in the modern world's most widely destructive and most subtle pleasure trap. So this is a new problem, really, even though it may seem to us like this has been with us for a long time. Really, when we look at human history, for more than 99% of human history, the major problem in human life was food deficiency. In fact, this is still the reality for many people in developing countries. More than 10,000 children currently die each day from starvation. Think about this number. It's mind-boggling that every single day in the last 24 hours, 10,000 children have died of starvation, and in the next 24 hours, 10,000 more will die, and in the next 24 hours, 10,000 more will die. But for us, this is no longer true. In developed societies, the very notion of starvation has become totally foreign. Instead, we now face a dangerous magnification of abundance, magic foods of artificial chemical composition and unnaturally high caloric density. Let's take the magic and the wonderful and the beautiful and the delicious potato, which is 500 calories per pound. 1 pound of potatoes is 500 calories. But what happens when we eat potato chips? It's not 500 anymore. It's 2,500. Do you see the increase of the calories per pound? Our natural motivational mechanisms seeking the most survival value for the least effort draw us toward foods of extreme caloric density. Only that before, those foods were not in existence. Not long ago, really. Potato chips did not exist. So we didn't have to deal with this pleasure trap. This artificial caloric density has effects that, like drugs, are both compelling and deadly. People are now neuroadapted to a diet that is overly rich in animal-based and unhealthful processed foods. The human, economic, and environmental cost of this situation is staggering. We are a civilization ensnared in a dietary pleasure trap. Any questions? Please feel free to type any questions you may have. So on page 90, it says, it's up to you. What this means is that it remains to be seen whether or not our culture will discover and embrace a healthier lifestyle. There are encouraging signs, but the obstacles are just overwhelmingly huge. Modern foods are like magical poisons, hyper-stimulating the brain's pleasure centers while simultaneously destroying health. The deception is astonishing and is perhaps too subtle for many to ever recognize. So the authors say, we hope that we have made it clear that you do not need to be a victim. By revising your dietary habits, you can take control of your life. On page 91, there is a heading that says summing up. So here's the summary now. A pleasure trap exists when a component of the motivational triad is deceived. This occurs with drug use, as pleasure centers in the brain may be doused in dopamine, resulting in a short-lived, exaggerated feeling of well-being. The rewarding nature of these experiences can lead to habitual use and to a phenomenon known as tolerance, also known as neuroadaptation. This condition encourages further use and may result in both physical and psychological self-destruction. Modern foods may cause an analogous pleasure trap. The modern diet, laden with high-fat animal and processed foods, has taste-stimulating capacities that are greater than a diet of whole natural foods. This excessive stimulation results in neuroadaptation, wherein taste nerves become insensitive to the pleasure of whole natural foods. Consistent consumption of the modern diet has made most people, in effect, addicts of the modern fare. So how do you take action? Okay, well, here we go. Very important. The first weapon against the problem of taste addiction is the knowledge that taste buds can readapt and will readapt to whole natural foods within a few weeks. That is, most people are just a few weeks away from being able to enjoy healthy fare and support their health with minimal taste sacrifice. A second weapon is the use of a short-term mono diet of a favorite whole natural food, such as watermelon or a juice diet. Such techniques remove virtually all salt and fat from the diet for 2 or 3 days, and help to restore sensitivity to taste nerves. This can make for a much easier transition to a diet of whole natural foods. So sometimes, if you're going to transition, it may help to, for 2 or 3 days, just go with one food, like Dr. Lyle says here, watermelon or a juice diet. Remember, we all know that a whole food, plant-based, no oil diet is extremely delicious with with chefs like Chef AJ and Chef Shada and Kathy, um, uh, Kathy, well, please remind me of Kathy's last name. She wrote a wonderful, wonderful cookbook. And we can also we can also go to websites. Yeah, Kathy Fisher. Thank you very much, Kathy Fisher. Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. McDougall. In their websites you have recipes. In my YouTube channel, you have a lot of delicious recipes. Actually, when you become a member of my fan club, you get 10 of my very, very special webinars where you can watch and download the PDFs, and you will not miss any of the holiday food or any of the food that was a pleasure trap. So I hope you found this chapter very useful, like I have. And then if you have the book, which I hope you do, then at the end of this chapter you have 10 questions that will assess your present and past relationship to the diet and lifestyle pleasure trap, and it will help you to go through these questions. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Our 50th anniversary is coming up with a 4-day eating out vacation with family. Help! I'm truly very appreciative. Yes. Well, like Dr. Lyle said last week as well, when you have situations like these, you have to prepare. Don't leave it to chance. You have to prepare, and you have to prepare mentally. You have to prepare by taking food. You have to preparing with answers that are not going to be confrontational and cause, fight or trouble. So it takes preparation, but it's worth it. It's worth it because we have just read how these pleasure traps will kill us if we get back in. And actually, if you're out of the pleasure trap and for some reason you're back in, it becomes more difficult. It's not impossible, but it's more difficult. So please, if you have any questions, you can always email me. I do coaching sessions. Usually with one coaching session, I can help a lot. If you're interested in that, you can email me. And if you're interested in, this is totally different now. If you're interested in learning something like piano, I give piano lessons online. Something that will be rewarding, that will get your mind off food, that will get your mind in a creative mood, things like that. You could take a foreign language class. You could do a lot of things. I know Chef AJ is big on doing, getting involved in the community, and maybe you can volunteer in an animal shelter or in a hospital, or I don't know, things like that. But can also help us to get our minds off these traps. All right. So thank you again for joining me. And if you are in my Tea with Dr. T club, I will see you tomorrow, Tuesday, at this time, which is 1 p.m. Pacific and 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. And thank you again. Thank you for being here. And usually when the email goes out, there is a little link for donations. Any of you who would like to donate, this is now the way that I help people, and I also support myself. And I will continue to do these things for free, no matter what. But if you're ever inclined to give a donation, there is a link there. All right, we'll see you next week. And next week, we will be reading chapter 10 and possibly 10 and 11. So that's your homework. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a wonderful week.